I'm Dylan Ratigan. I've interviewed nearly every CEO and most world leaders during the past 25 years. And now on Bootstrapping, I'm turning my attention to the new CEOs and the irrepressible entrepreneurs leading the next generation of innovation in the world. Welcome back to Tasty Live. I am Dylan Ratigan. Time for another episode of Bootstrapping. My guest today, Ken Rogers, the CEO of a company called MySlabs, another company raising on Republic. We can talk about that later. MySlabs, the description reads, Ken says, is a peer-to-peer marketplace created by collectors for collectors who are seeking an alternative to the high auction and consignment fees that have become standard in the hobby. So what is the hobby that you speak of?
So I guess our bread and butter business historically has been the sports card hobby. And more recently comic books as well. But yeah, I mean, obviously sports cards is...
So when it comes to collectibles, whether it's pianos or cars or rings or coins, nothing, the most liquid and most demand is for sports cards to this day.
Yeah, I mean, I think, likely because sports cards have, especially modern sports cards, have the best catalysts, right? So like folks can, speculate based on, what's happening. And obviously, as modern card prices move, a lot of times that impacts, the vintage card prices, which is, So
of the whole collectibles marketplace, of every dollar that gets spent in the collectibles marketplace, 50 cents is in sports cards, 80 cents is in sports cards. How much of the overall collectibles market is, by dollar value, resides in sports cards?
Oof. I mean, it's
1 out of 2.
I mean, it's tough to say exactly. I mean, there's obviously a lot of, collectibles categories. I mean, certainly memorabilia is big,
cars,
coins and currency, but comic books, of course, and so many others. But yeah, I mean, I would say at least somewhere in the 25 to 50% range, if I had to guess. Yeah.
And then you kind of just mentioned what would kind of fill out the bulk of the majority minority stakes would be, as you mentioned, comic books and down the line. Yeah. And so, but let's just talk about sports cards. What was the fee structure and commission? Because your business is helping people create liquidity, facilitate trading collectibles, including sports cards, right? Sure. And so before you exist, what was my fee structure? And now that how have you changed my relationship with buying and selling a sports card collectible?
Sure. So, at the time, when MySlabs, when the idea first came about, really, the channels that folks had to, buy and sell these things, especially online, was typically, either an auction house, which, in terms of fees, like an auction house is going to be in the 20 to 30% range. Then there's...
You're saying that's for like something that's super duper fancy, an original Willie Mays at Christie's.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, of course, things like that, but even, down into the low, even into the high 3 figures, auction houses, there are auction houses.
That's a third plus or minus is the fee there.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then, there's, the go-to for a lot of folks, eBay, right? Like, so eBay, their standard fee structure is 10%. They obviously also have a peer-to-peer model. And, and then of course, in this day and age, social media, and obviously,
and it's just sort of the diaspora of the infinite social TTC.
Right. So, with social media, obviously the fees are very low, but unfortunately, there's zero vetting and accountability on social media. So obviously,
you have no integrity in your market. Your bid has no integrity.
Right. Exactly. It's just a lot riskier. It's a lot more of a risky way to transact. So essentially, MySlabs, the space that we kind of occupy.
eBay is kind of your incumbent here.
Yes. Yes. So, with eBay,
how are you different?
Well, when we launched MySlabs, the fee structure was 1%, right? So it's a significant,
10 times cheaper.
Yes, and then also a big problem on eBay is that eBay's been around forever. I think in a lot of ways they got very complacent with a lot of their processes and vetting, and unfortunately a lot of folks there's non-payers on eBay, just a lot of bad actors that just it's folks have a lot of issues, dealing that way. Just people again.
You're just thinking in terms of performance on the contracts has gotten weaker.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially in sports cards, right? Like if it's Super Bowl weekend and somebody buys a Tom Brady card, and they lose the Super Bowl, then the following week they'll put in a return type of thing, right? Like, and it's so that type of thing, which we've put processes and
so then how are you different? How are you protecting the contract basically?
Okay, so essentially on both sides of the transaction, on the buyers are required to pay within 24 hours of agreeing to a deal, and sellers are required to ship within 3 business days. Otherwise, if either side of that doesn't come to fruition, the individual is removed from the platform. So I mean, obviously that's it's kind of like an old school approach, but the community is really.
You're saying one strike and you're out on the boundaries for the buy and the sell side,
with few exceptions. And another big thing also is we have a no return policy. So folks, if you buy something, buyer's remorse, which is very typical in other platforms. Again,
can't help you.
Yeah, we can't help you, and like I said, things like that, it's the community is really embraced, because it's such a problem on other platforms.
And are you popular with a community in a specific category of collectible, or is it across multiple categories?
Well, right now it's sports cards, right? Like that was where we broke in. I mean, that's the bulk, probably 99% of our business right now, and that's really the proof of concept that we tried to build was in that category. I mean, comics to a lesser degree. I mean, we've launched comics, but I've done very little marketing there to generate awareness. So yeah, again, which is kind of brings us to the raise, and the upside that we see is really kind of taking the proof of concept that we built in the sports card side and bringing that to other markets.
And your concept is what?
Essentially a peer-to-peer platform with industry low fees and a high degree of accountability. So, if you agree to a deal, if you transact on my slabs, like, with a pretty high degree of certainty that the individual on the other side of the transaction is going to follow through very professionally. And when you're dealing on a peer-to-peer level, I mean, again, it's a real pain point for a lot of folks. So we feel that we really bring that. And, again, like our growth, over the last couple of years with, just, no investment and very little marketing, it's been the proof
so
is
describe your growth. What is the growth? Where are you now and where were you and where do you think?
Sure. So in the beginning of 2021, we were at about 10,000 users. And we got to 10,000 users mostly through, again, grassroots, through social media. In the early stages, it took a couple of years, from when we launched the initial website, the initial concept. And then since, early of 2021 till now, we're close to 70,000 users. And our sellers, have sold cumulatively like somewhere in the ballpark of, $80 million in collectibles.
Well, how many individual transactions? Ballpark? Hundreds of thousands?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Millions?
Not millions, but hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands of transactions across now 70,000 users.
Yes.
99% of which is sports cards at this point.
Yes.
But the tech is obviously applicable to any collectible environment where you want high accountability, where you want basically a community that's trained into your culture.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's a fair way to put it. I mean, we feel that those pain points exist across all collectibles categories. So it's really just a matter of generating awareness.
And so where do you think as on the one hand, you're like, oh, we could use this everywhere. You could use this on lots of things. But where do you think that the one or two sort of immediate path of least resistance to expand is, either inside of sports cards or adjacently?
Well, for us, on the short-term roadmap, which is something that what we feel is going to move the needle most significantly is adding auction capability to our website. So up until this point, My Slabs has been exclusively a buy it now / best offer marketplace. So it's, it's a fixed price marketplace is what they typically refer to it. So, however, just some of the research and market data that's publicly available from, some of our competitors, the auction side of this industry is in many cases just one competitor, that their data is very public. It's 30 to 40 times the size of their fixed price sales. So
you're saying if you were to migrate this existing fixed price community and offer them an auction product with the same characteristics, that you could do a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's once it gains traction, it's gonna, in terms of GMV, it's gonna be an exponential move, because it's, our members are utilizing auctions. They're just not doing it through us because we currently don't have it built into the platform.
And is that why you're raising money?
One of the reasons, yeah. One of the primary reasons is, the tech. Obviously in this day and age, to build things out yourself, and obviously there's technology kind of
basically money to pay for developers to establish the auction platform.
Absolutely, and other things as well. But yes,
sure.
Yes.
And what other things? In other words, do you have an opinion on where you want to go? I mean, in other words, do you think that there's more growth bringing auctions? There's probably the most growth bringing auctions into baseball, into cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
More than trying to go to other categories.
No, absolutely. But when we launch the auction capability, we're going to launch it across the platform. So, I mean, currently, obviously, sports cards, like I said, is 99% of our business. We do have the comic book category live, and we have this. We recently launched, the memorabilia category, Funko Pops, which is another collectibles category. Those are very new. The collectible coins and currency, like just numismatic, coins and precious metal coins. It's a huge market. That's something we obviously are excited about launching in the next, 6 to 12 months, but, it's not even live on the platform yet. But the point is, we do plan.
What about sneakers or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's ultimately, it's all on the menu eventually. I mean, the reason more on the collectible.
Better to do auctions in baseball cards than sneakers, though, from an investor standpoint, I'm sure.
What's that?
I said better to do auctions in sports cards than do collectible sneakers with your resources at this point in time, I would imagine.
Sure. And then also, with some of the categories that I mentioned, like the comic books, the coins, there are third-party authentication / grading companies that actually, which is where the name slabs came from. They actually slab, so they authenticate and grade the items. In a peer-to-peer context, it actually, just in terms of like authenticity and things like that, it's a road of least resistance for us, as a peer-to-peer platform. Whereas like something like sneakers, it's because those things aren't necessarily, slabbed, and encapsulated.
They're easier to be inauthentic.
Yes.
What's the largest single transaction that you've done on your platform?
The largest transaction to date, I believe, was a Tom Brady rookie card that sold close to 6 figures.
And that was 3 days, no refunds, all the same rules.
Yeah, peer to peer. We didn't touch, the item. It was just between, the buyer and seller on the platform.
And how big of a business do you think this can be?
I mean, listen. Obviously, if we just take 2022 as a benchmark, because I think it was, a relatively normal year. We did our business just as a fixed price marketplace in sports cards. Our sellers sold 25 million in GMV roughly in 2022. Listen, just on the sports card side, if we launch a successful auction product, even if we were able to 4x that, and not even the 30, 40x that some of our competitors are doing on the auction side, but even if we're able to 4x, that GMV, that's 100 million, right? And our current take rate, since inception, we raised our seller fee to 2%, and we do charge a 1% buyer premium, so our take is 3%. Mm-hmm. So, that's $3 million, top line.
Starts to turn into money.
Yeah, we have a remote staff, so
Do you
we
worry that that eBay might create an ecosystem where they basically copy your
you
parameters
know,
and create a little sandbox of their own?
to be honest with you, like the trend in the space in terms of fees has been to go up. Very rarely do you see the big successful companies want to go backwards in fees. And so, if anything, over the last few years, the competitors have been inching the fees up. So, like I don't really see them, lowering their margin significantly to try to, unless we became big enough of a problem, maybe they
Right.
would.
They're not in any hurry to go to 2 or 3%
Yeah,
fees.
I think they'd buy us first.
Yeah. Yeah. How much are you raising?
Right now, through the crowdfunded round, we capped it at 1.25 million.
Okay.
To be honest, I mean, we could certainly raise more. We've had certainly have had interest over the last year or two, just because of all the VC activity in the space. Most notably Fanatics, who acquired the licenses for for the three of the major sports, in the sports card side. And they're Michael Rubin, the CEO, is very publicly stated many times that they plan to bring a degree of marketing to sports cards that's never been there before, to bring it to the masses, and he wants to 10x the hobby. Yeah. So I mean, obviously,
So what's the most undervalued card on the market today?
the most undervalued card.
Yeah.
Um, That's a tough one. I mean, obviously, you talking like vintage or modern?
Listen, I don't care. I'm talking about a value proposition. I mean, if you can, get me into a Ken Griffey at a discount, where is the market and where do you think someone is being undervalued?
I think that there is value in players that are later in their careers, that are on a Hall of Fame trajectory, but maybe their peak years are behind them. And sometimes, like when again, like folks are toward the end of their Hall of Fame trajectory career, sometimes they're just people aren't paying as much attention to them, but ultimately, usually there's a good catalyst when someone does get into the Hall of Fame. And
You're saying you can get a little low, you can get a Hall of Famer. I'll use Joe Montana, which is not a baseball example, but now he's playing in Kansas City. He's been busted up. I mean, that's probably not the best example because he was so famous. He probably didn't have that experience. But somebody that basically is in their Kansas City years or their Tampa Bay years or their, whatever those last 2 or 3 years of doing the thing is.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
Wayne Gretzky in LA, but without being Wayne Gretzky.
Right. I mean, I think that's a good example. Like when Joe Montana was in his prime in the early to mid '80s, winning Super Bowls every other year. I mean, it's obviously a lot of interest in his cards, and there's a lot of attention, and obviously drives demand and prices. And then I think on the other side of it, when he does get elected to the Hall of Fame and people are able to kind of reflect on the full body of work, I think there's also something to be said for that as well, when the story's fully written. But again, when you have a guy like that in his Kansas City years where he's still kind of playing and he's just not really putting up the same numbers and he's not getting the attention, but his legacy isn't fully established, I think there's a pocket of value there.
Who's most overvalued?
I think the most overvalued, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, but I think sometimes very hot young players that are in the first few years of their career, I think that
people overpay for the kid.
Yes, people will overpay for the next up and coming thing, and I think that a lot gets priced into players in the first few years of their career that come in with a lot of hype. A lot gets priced in, and ultimately, I think there's a lot of risk there that if they don't necessarily live up, or in some cases they can even be all-stars, but that things, championships and MVPs get priced into some players. So I think that for certain young players, I think the bar is very high. So I think that there's more risk there, for sure.
And is baseball, I'm assuming, still the dominant sports card in terms of activity?
Um, I would say vintage, yes. Certainly modern, but there obviously there's modern baseball cards. But I would say on the modern side, the hottest cards are the NBA players and NFL quarterbacks.
Really?
People love to speculate on NFL quarterbacks, and
But can I go back and trade Dan Marino's card? Does his price change? Like, did the old legends change in price, or we're talking about the current crop of
yeah, it's always the new quarterbacks, right? Like who's going to be the next Tom Brady? So it's the Pat Mahomes.
Mahomes is the big. There's a whole thing with Mahomes.
Yeah, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Tua, like all the Trevor Lawrence, like all the up and coming
this year's class.
Yeah, I mean those are the guys that everybody loves to speculate on. I mean, I like to liken the Dan Marinos and the old school Hall of Famers more like a blue chip stock. Yeah, it's like a blue chip stock. It's like slow and steady, right? Like if you buy it, you love it, you put it away for 10 years, it's going to go up in value, but it's not going to double or triple in price. Obviously barring something. In the macro that impacts.
And then with NBA, how much of it revolves around the handful of whatever 2 or 3 obvious names, and how much of it is broader than that? Like how much of it is about Steph Curry and LeBron James, and how much of it is it about their 22-year-olds?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's all the above, but yeah, I mean, it's always folks are really hyper focused on who's going to be the next LeBron, right? Who's going to be the next Curry? Who's going to be the next guy that's, going to, win a few rings? And like, that's what everybody's always trying, that's what folks are trying to speculate on is that.
Who do they like in the NBA as a card right now?
I mean, Wembanyama, right? Like he's like the brand new, the.
What about the Serbian kid from last year? He was a big deal. I forget his name. The Denver guy won the thing.
Jokic. Yeah,
no, have something going.
Of course, yeah, no, and he's obviously like an advanced metric, darling. So all the advanced metric guys love Jokic, but his cards. I think that his cards didn't necessarily get the attention of like the Giannis's or the Luka Doncic's and those types of players, but. But now obviously that he's got a title, I mean, he's already got a couple of MVPs, but I think since he added that ring, it's definitely helped his cards pretty significantly.
Yeah. And in the insanity of his sort of non-athletic appearance and the way that he plays basketball while doing it better than all of the best athletes on the court.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch. It's bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because of what, exactly what you just said, the market didn't necessarily embrace him like out of the gate like they embraced somebody like a Zion Williamson or
an obvious super athlete.
Yes,
with all the muscles and the things and
absolutely, but there's definitely some podcasters and folks that are again super into the advanced metrics that love Jokic.
On the list for the Jokic, that's my card. That's what I'm gonna look on your platform. If I want a card, that's my guy.
Yeah, and I respect that. I like that approach.
That's a good. I like that guy. All right, Ken. Listen, congratulations on your success. Pleasure to have the discussion. Ken Rogers, the company, My Slabs, a slab being a collectible industry jargon for a certification or a verification. So a new take, much lower fees and much higher penalties for non-performance, which means much higher levels of performance. You're watching Bootstrapping. I'm Dylan Ratigan. We're back with more Tasty Live after this.
Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it.